Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today's conversation is with one of my favorite people, Titania Jordan of Bark Technologies. We talked about screen time, the struggles of parenting in a digital world, and had quite a few laughs. I hope you enjoy the conversation. But before I jump in, I wanted to share that this week's episode sponsor is Bark Technologies. Bark is a parental controls company for parents who are looking to protect their children from online harms and manage their entire digital experience. I am so grateful that parents of today have resources like Bark to help make our kids' online activities safer. I have been getting from parents that, even today, you're fear mongering. We need more education. And I love to say, like, we should be afraid as parents about social media. But within these messages is a lot of education, especially from parents who have been harmed. They've learned so much, and we can learn from them.
I get it, but at the
Yeah.
same time, we need more of it. We need parents like me of a 15 and a half year old to talk to all the parents of second graders, third graders, 4 year olds, whatever, and let them know, here's what's coming. Here's what I wish I knew when my kid was your age. Don't make these same mistakes. I wish somebody would have put more fear into me because I thought, how bad could it be? It can't be
Yeah.
that bad.
Yeah.
It's that bad. It's worse.
What did you learn about screen time in your experience?
That it is way more addictive than I thought it might be. It hinders your child's ability to be bored, to be creative, to find joy in anything else that isn't a screen. The amount of dopamine, which I'm not literally measuring because I'm not a doctor, I wouldn't even know where to pull it from safely. But like, I can ascertain that the dopamine hits that my son gets from PS5, anything on that, or Snapchat or Instagram or anything, far surpasses, unfortunately, what he would get from reading a book, playing Monopoly with his dad and I, etc. So it's an
Yeah.
unfair battle.
Do you guys
And
play Monopoly? We love playing
we do
Monopoly.
love Monopoly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like it's true love when I let somebody else be the car because I'm always the
I'm the
car.
car.
Yeah, yeah, but
Nobody can be the car.
I let my son be the car. That's how
Oh
much I
my
love him.
God. Why do you do
Mm,
that? I guess my kids don't want to be the car, so I got it under control. But
that's fun.
we got like the fast action version, so it doesn't last as long because, we can get it done. I can beat them in 40 minutes, 35 minutes.
Dude, I'm gonna have to
But
Google that.
yeah, but my 6-year-old is getting really good, so I've got competition. So I wanted to touch on a screen time study that I found, and they actually did study teenagers' brains using MRIs. It was by a journal called PLOS Mental Health, so that's the Public Library of Science. And this was a worrisome study to me. I thought it was important to share with parents. So they studied screen time in teenagers and found that teens who spend a lot of time on the internet and social media feel that they can't pay attention to important things like homework or time or loved ones, obviously, but specifically for teens diagnosed with internet addiction. And I'll explain what they mean by that. Signaling between brain regions that control attention and working memory were disrupted. So we're seeing actual issues within their brain and the way it's firing and affecting how they can focus. And I thought it was interesting what constitutes internet addiction. So there was 3 criteria. Criterion, is that one?
I'm not judging.
Okay.
I'll go with either.
3 criteria for clinical diagnosis of internet addiction. So number 1, one's persistent preoccupation with the internet. I'm going to sub in
Check.
social media. Check.
Check.
Withdrawal symptoms when away from it. So,
Check.
and then sacrificing relationships for time spent on internet or social media. Sounds like every teenager in America, or maybe even every adult.
That's Yep. So what do we do, Nikki?
Right. And also, doctors are sharing with me excessive screen time can result in obesity, irregular sleep, which causes issues at school, behavioral problems, even violence. So there are many reasons why we have to pay attention to screen time and limit screen time. I recently interviewed Dr. John Hutton, who is a researcher and pediatrician, and he shared a couple things with me that I think are powerful. So the screen truly collapses the 5 senses into 2. So you only then have audio and visual. So the child is not interacting with anything besides their audio and visual senses, which I thought was really an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. No tactile, no smell, no
And optimal brain development for a child is multisensory. So, real world experiences, open ended, a child can explore and engage with caregivers and friends face to face. So, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and you have this in a recent blog on the Bark site, what do they officially recommend for appropriate screen time at the different ages? And then we'll talk about whether or not we agree.
Yeah. So for toddlers, limit screen time to less than 1 hour a day. For age 2 to 5, limit screen time to 1 hour per day, 3 hours on the weekends, and caveat of high quality programming, like not just mindless consumption. And ideally, watch it together with them to help them understand what they're seeing, right? We all know that something that is on Nickelodeon could be different than something that is on YouTube that looks like it's the Nickelodeon characters, but they're doing very different things. So, sidebar. For 6 years and older, make sure you have consistent limits on the amount of time spent on devices. They don't give a specific recommendation per my quick scan, but it's always been, to my knowledge, around no more than 2 hours at a time. If you were having 2 full hours in one sitting, you got to take a break.
Imagine just how we feel after watching 2 hours of TV at a time or staring at our phone for
Yeah,
2 hours. Brain
no,
dead.
absolutely not. No, no, thank you.
What do you think about and what have you heard about? So, the toddler years, AAP is recommending less than 1 hour a day. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
I would say even less.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that understanding how hard it is to have a toddler, to be a working mom or just a full time mom without an extra job, trying to manage all kinds of things. The
Mm-hmm.
screen is an excellent babysitter in terms of its ability to capture your child's attention and keep
Mm,
them sedentary. But it's a horrible babysitter in terms of the long term effects it has on your child's physical and mental health.
exactly.
So I get it. I've been there. I've relied on a screen too much. But if I could go back to when my son was that age, I don't know if I'd even have any screens in the house. I know that sounds drastic, but
Mm-hmm.
I would fill the house with blocks, books. And we had those, but there was also a screen, and it's okay for your kid to be bored. It's okay for them to play with a roll of tape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm at the point now where I would rather you draw on the wall with crayon because you're drawing, right? And like I know that's extreme, but anyway, now I'm rambling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should strive to let your kid have an hour of screens a day. That's
Great.
problematic.
Yeah, agree. And the multiple doctors I've talked to say toddlers should have no screen time, like screen free until 3 is what I've heard, and that babies need humans, not screens. And so I
Yes.
know it can feel impossible, right? Like it can feel impossible, but I challenge parents not to go to the screen. See what happens. And if your baby or toddler is used to going to a screen to soothe themselves, it's going to take a little time to wean off of that
Yeah.
dopamine addiction that they're having. So expect
Yes.
some pushback. Doctors have been advising me that after a few days, you'll be so happy with how creative they're being, with how they're able to soothe themselves and keep themselves busy and entertained without a screen.
One thing that really concerns me is I've heard, well, actually, two things recently, but one as it pertains to this specifically is that children are now having to go to therapy in the later toddler years to learn how to react to certain instances because their caregivers were in front of a screen and they didn't see appropriate modeling of like empathy. Like if somebody fell down, right? In the past, kids would be like, oh no. But now they're just like, no reaction, right? And so things like that scare me. I talked to a recent elementary school principal, and she was saying that there are kindergartners showing up not potty trained. Like 20 kindergartners showed up not potty trained because of the pandemic. And there is a lot that has happened over the past 4 years. Screens have not helped.
No. And when we talk about putting limits by hour time on screen time, that can be confusing because there's so many different sources of screen time now. So there's iPads and TV and school issued devices they're bringing home and phones and then games and then the watches even. So one pediatrician, and we'll talk about some like tips, but one pediatrician I talked to said to think about context. So set up situations where technology is not a thing. Maybe it's your whole house, or maybe it's just maybe it's just meal times, or maybe it's just car rides, no technology. Maybe it's restaurants, grocery store. Definitely the kid's bedroom. We're not having devices in the kid's bedroom, guys. It's like,
Please, please, come on.
I don't want to be judgmental, but we cannot. That's where the
We
bad stuff
can't.
happens,
No,
in the
I
bedroom at
did
night.
that. That was a bad
Mhm.
mistake. Don't do that. I'll tell
Yeah.
you, like, don't do it.
Right. Any other thoughts around like where or when you could keep your kids screen free, context wise?
Let's say car rides, for example. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't already have like a luxury vehicle that has the, screen built into the back of the front seat,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just in their face, right?
Yeah,
But
I know.
let's say you don't have that vehicle. Don't hand them the iPad. Don't
Mm-hmm.
like car trips, like the short ones, right? I get it if you have to drive for 10 hours in the car, you might need a break, but like
Mm-hmm.
quick trips, you don't need screens. Doctor's appointments,
Mm-hmm.
restaurants, I'm just trying to think of everywhere I was like, ooh, I've got this quick
Yeah.
fix. Here you
You know
go.
what I think is a great learning experience is the grocery store. Like where your
Yes.
kid is, they can be so engaged. There's so many things to engage with and ask questions about. Like, and you're
Yes.
just blocking all of that engagement and those learning experiences by the device. So I love that one. I'll say that I have the TVs in my van, and we keep it for, I would say we go to my parents' house. It's 2 hours away. We don't even open them then. So maybe it'd be like a 4 hour car ride that I would
Yeah.
consider a movie for half the time, and then like not, but they don't ask for it. And sometimes they're quiet for 40 minutes just looking around. And what are they thinking about? It's like so fascinating to think what they're thinking about. I just so enjoy that time. Or you talk or you play games, car games. Like there's so many options. And it just takes intention of if you have to write it down or have a conversation with your partner, whatever, just make decisions that this is where we're going to set rules around it. And the kids, if the rules are there, they'll get used to it and they'll be on board.
Yeah, you're the parent, you're in charge, period.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
on top of that, in addition to the rules that you set, you have to model it. You can't be the one vegging out with the screen on all the time, you know, also in front of this thing all the time, not making eye contact with your child.
Do you have any tips around how parents can try to set some boundaries with their own screen time in the home?
Yeah, leave it in a different room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so liberating. I used to be a little freaked out, but like I'm in a certain room of my house right now. Like I will leave my phone and my laptop in this room when I go do other things, so I'm not
Mm-hmm.
constantly tethered to it. So if
Mm-hmm.
my son comes up to me, he's going to have my full attention, not the attention as long as mom doesn't get a notification.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be intentional about setting time limits. Maybe there's a bunch of different options now for like tech boxes, lock boxes. You have to be intentional, just like you have to be intentional about not letting your kid have ice cream and pizza for every meal. It
Mm-hmm.
tastes great. Is it good for them? No. Do they
Right.
want more of it the more you give it to them? Yes. There's no difference between screens and ice cream. Like, same
Mm-hmm.
thing, right?
And then when they see
Moderation.
you eating it, they're like, why don't I get it?
I know.
Like, I'm an adult.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can eat ice cream whenever I want.
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, my husband and I are pretty good about leaving our phones in our bedroom, which is upstairs, and when the kids are home. And so ideally they don't see us with it. And if they do, they can tell us, hey, put your phone away. And then we have to do that because that was our rule that we set. And that's been just like a game changer for engaging with them, not having distractions. I am thinking now we need like a landline phone because sometimes I'll be like, if no one can get a hold of me right now if there's an emergency.
That is true. Or like, I always have my watch on. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if I see my mom or my sister calling, like,
Mm-hmm.
I can be like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to just make sure they're okay. And if
Mm-hmm.
everything's cool, I'm going to tell them we'll connect later because I'm with you right now in real life. So
Yeah.
communicating that too, like if you do have to reach for your phone, say, hey, I just got a notification. I see that
Mm-hmm.
it's grandma. I'm going to write her back real quick. But if it was anybody else, I wouldn't.
Yeah. Right.
Or it's during work hours. This is an email that I do have to attend to,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to put it away very quickly and then get back to our Monopoly game or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. How does the watch make you feel? Do you feel like it stresses you out in addition to being helpful?
It doesn't stress me out because I have progressed in my hamster in a wheel
Mm-hmm.
mentality.
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 years ago, it definitely would be like, oh, I have to respond. I have to respond. I have to respond. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a like, this is the in case of emergency.
Okay.
situation,
Yeah.
but I'm not beholden to it.
Okay. Yeah, I had it for a couple of years, Apple Watch, and
Hmm.
I just felt like that. I liked it for working out, tracking calories, things like that. But I didn't like being dinged all the time. It was definitely distracting to the time when I was trying to be disconnected. Obviously, you can just take the watch off as well. But yeah, I go back and forth on it. Decided for me not to use the watch at all.
Yeah, I really, over the past 2 years, have needed to prioritize physical health, movement. And
Hmm.
so the Apple Watch helps me have accountability for my steps.
Yeah,
And I've gone pretty over and above to turn off any notification that wasn't critical.
that's important. Yeah. I
So,
think I didn't take the time to do that. I think it was dinging me at every single thing. And I was like,
right.
screw this thing. It's out of here. I need to get back to my steps, Titania. I've not been good about steps. Oh,
You have to.
I
You have
know.
to. That's it. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah. Okay. So, pausing here to talk about tools that can help you manage your children's screen time, and that is the Bark phone and the Bark app. We don't have to default to an iPhone for our kids. In fact, we shouldn't. Bark has created the Bark phone, which is the most customizable kids phone with text and social media monitoring built in. Bark goes way beyond screen time monitoring using advanced AI to scan texts, social media images, videos, and audio for threats like drug content and cyberbullying, even child sexual abuse material. What our children are getting access to through their tech can be worrisome, but tools like Bark can give us peace of mind. If you are going with an Android or an iPhone, please consider layering on the Bark app, which is high-tech parental monitoring that scans your child's activities for harmful content, allows you to create screen time schedules, block certain websites and apps, and a ton more. Back to my conversation with Titania. This can be hard to manage because, like we said, there are so many different devices and it's hard to keep track. And also, we're having to add in time at school, the screen time at school. So, how can your solutions at Bark help parents manage our kids' screen time more easily?
Okay, great question. If your children go to a school that is very tech heavy, if they're in front of a screen a lot,
Hmm.
honestly having a heart to heart with their administration of like, how much of this can we dial back? We know kids need to move. We know they need to engage all five senses.
Hmm.
What could we translate back to paper, for example? So just
Hmm.
starting those conversations.
Yeah.
It's an uphill battle. It's a long road, but to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Also, making sure that your child's school is using Bark, because every school in the nation can use Bark's monitoring for free. So if your
Mhm.
kids do have to be in front of a screen, at least if they're using Bark to monitor for some problematic content and people, you're in a better setup. When the kids are at home, there's a few options. There is the Bark Home, which can connect to your internet that comes into your home through your router and help to manage screen time on any of the connected tech in your home, whether it's a gaming console, etc.
Mhm.
You can also utilize if and when your child is ready to have a smartphone. You can use the Bark phone for that because, again, you have way more control, way more insight. It can simply be a tool that you let your kid talk and text with trusted contacts, and that's it. Or if you decide they can use, Instagram for 20 minutes a day, you'll at least have more control over that and insight into that. And then there's also the Bark app that helps with monitoring and setting time limits for a variety of the connected tech that it can connect to. But at the end of the day, it's a layered approach. You need Bark because nothing else is going to monitor at the level that Bark monitors and alert you to the problematic content.
Mhm.
Where you don't need Bark, but please use something, is at the just setting time limits. There's plenty of free options out there. Apple Screen Time is free. It's buggy, but it's free. Google
Mhm.
Family Link, free. Any sort of gaming console probably has time limits you can set. Your internet service provider, your cellular service provider. I mean, there's so many things that if you just do 5 minutes of research, you can figure out how to set time limits.
Mhm.
So, whatever you use, Bark or not Bark, please set time limits for your kids when it comes to screens.
And when we talk about we have more control over our devices in our home, but then when we talk about school devices, don't assume that they are monitoring for anything because my kids' school, they don't get alerts when harmful things happen at all. If the teacher catches it, they have a history they can look back to, but there's no triggering of an alert if your child is being groomed, if they see porn, if they any of those things, which I was shocked to learn. So ask that question of your school. And I'm going to go to my school and be like, can you please employ Bark? Since I know that you are failing in alerting us if something harmful happens. Here's a solution for the school. And then it would be great to have something that is familiar on the school devices and the home devices as well, and kind of layering across all those devices. Anything else you want to share about screen time? Anything else you want to share about anything today with parents?
I mean, yeah, right. We could talk for hours. I want to thank you for the work that you've been doing, speaking to teachers, administrators to highlight what's happening at schools, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
parents really don't know.
Right.
And that's, our kids are spending more time there than they are at home. So
Mm-hmm.
that's problematic.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just reiterating that about 40% of schools in the United States, at least, don't have something, and they should if they're letting kids have tech.
Mm-hmm.
60% do, and we're thankful for those, but 40% don't. So a lot of work needs to happen.
Mm.
Next thing is, it was one thing 10 to 15 years ago when we really only had like Baby Einstein and PBS, and Sprout for our kids, and that
Mm.
was it. Screen time, that was a different kind of screen time.
Yeah.
Now it's much different, and parents really have to pay attention. Please don't think it's harmless. Everything in moderation is key, but this is becoming less and less of a silent epidemic and
Mm-hmm.
more of a very, very loud one. Just recently,
Mm-hmm.
the Surgeon General stated out loud publicly in an op ed in the New York Times that social media should come with a warning label. And by social media, I think a lot of people think, oh, he's talking about Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, etc. He's talking about anything that allows for communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's social in nature, and it's media. You can chat, you can send pictures, etc. Should have a warning label. That's the
Yeah.
Surgeon General. So you don't take my word for it.
Right.
Take the doctor of the nation's word for it.
The doctor of the nation. For real though. I mean, and we're
Right.
talking about YouTube and we're talking about Discord and all the gaming platforms. I mean, that is all included. And when we talk about screen time, the more your kids are on these platforms, the more harm they're going to be exposed to, the more violence. So it's limiting screen time, monitoring what they're watching, having conversations, all these things that we talk about. But when it comes to screen time, I hope this has been helpful, just a helpful reminder on what's appropriate, just to have that conversation and a check-in with your kids about screen time. And please check into the Bark solutions to help manage screen time and all of the things that our kids are doing on their devices. So Titania, thank you again for joining me.
Oh my gosh, Nikki, thank you. Still your number one fan. And keep doing what you're doing. It's incredible. Incredible.
Thank you, Titania. You're wonderful.